So sourcing biomass in a responsible way is absolutely central to what we do. It starts again at a relatively, I would say the first sort of baseline is that we need to comply with the regulatory obligations that we have, and we do that. So that means sourcing from forests that are growing. It means sourcing from and not having an impact or negative impact on biodiversity, supporting the communities where we operate, etc. Right? But I think we want to take that another step forward because the world is going through a climate emergency. There's also a growing nature emergency, and ultimately, Draxtar sustainability policy is at the core of our strategy, right? And that includes, how do we make sure that we are having a positive climate impact? How do we ensure we're having a positive nature impact? And we have, multiple programs underway to make sure that that happens. We actually joined forces with Earthworm a few years ago and to ask the question, how can we better demonstrate the impact that we have in the landscapes where we operate? And we chose to look at 4 different metrics. So our impact on carbon, our impact on nature, impact on communities, and impact on economies and the people that are there. And so we've started to put together, I think, quite an effective body of work that actually starts to look at, what is the impact that we have there? So I'm very excited about that. And I think we also now want to take that a step further and potentially move into actual real field work to show actually on the ground, what is actually being able to demonstrate what's absolutely happening there, because I think that's going to be very important. Fundamentally, I would see sort of biomass is not actually a standalone issue, but really part of a whole forest ecosystem, industrial ecosystem that has to be managed well. So the question really is, how should the forests be managed in a way that the forests are regrowing, they're healthy, they're leading to greater biodiversity, all of those good things, and then the things that come out of the forest are used in the best possible way. For me, having good engagement across the spectrum with NGOs to get to the right standards so that we actually all can be comfortable it's done properly is a key part of the question. But we operate in really 2 different types of forests. So when we operate in the southeast of the U.S., the forests are growing, they tend to be healthy, and I think we play a positive role in that system. In other parts of the world where we operate, so for example, we source from Portugal, where there have been very bad forest fires, or we source from British Columbia, where again, bad forest fires this past summer. And absolutely, we can actually, if we take wood that otherwise, for example, would have been burnt at the side of the road, or if we can help clean up biomass or sort of residuals that have been left in the forest that ultimately could burn, or wood that's diseased and dying, which is a lot of what we do in British Columbia, we can have a very positive impact. So the biggest challenge that we face often is not in the actual sort of restoration, but it's actually convincing people that what we are doing is the right thing. In fact, if you ask me what's my biggest challenge, my challenge is that you get to almost a dinner time conversation with someone who has a little bit of information and knowledge about what we do, and they ask the question, how can it be a good idea to use biomass to create power, to sort of burn wood to create power? So there's a lot of explaining that goes into that. But ultimately, again, if we're doing the right thing by the forests, what we're doing is really part of a forest ecosystem where we are using residuals, we're using the byproducts of the forest products industry to make power, which I think is a good thing. We have to be able to sort of be honest and open about everything that we do, right? At the end of the day, the biggest problem a company can have is if it's saying one thing and doing something else, because people will find out. I mean, the world is way too open, information travels way too freely for that not to happen. So for me, fundamentally, what we say has to be at the core of who we are, and I think that's absolutely the case. Yeah.